Hello, everyone. Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It's time for Inside Arsenal Extra Time. So, as you can see, I'm joined once again by James Benge of CBS Sports. How are you doing, James? How's the navigation of the international break been?
Sloggy. How are you doing? Because you look like you're sort of about to tell me that your captors are treating you well wherever you are.
Yes, this is my downstairs recording section, which is basically the only bit where I can film, where behind me is not just a load of crap piled up upon a pile of other crap. And so it's basically the only place I can record for now until I get out of this house. So yeah, unfortunately, is this. And I could turn it the other way, but I got so bored of people complaining about the cables hanging down from the TV behind me
Of course.
that I was like, you know what, I'm just going to move it to this bit now. Once I had the decorators in and we sorted the walls out, but still kept the TV with the wires hanging down, I'm not going back to that again. So this
I'll
is it.
buy you one of those little things. You get a little thing to put all the wires in.
I know,
You don't
but
even need to go in the
didn't wanna-
walls.
the whole reason we got this tidied up was to sell it, and I didn't want to be fixing things to walls, if you see what I mean. And
Yeah.
so yeah, no, that wasn't going to happen this time. So this is it. Now you got this. You can almost make a shadow puppet behind me on this, but it is what it is. So yeah. But other than that, been a decent couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's been all right. Usually these, you know, especially of late with Arsenal, these have sort of felt like quite quiet times where you can catch up with your work. And it really was shaping up to be that, wasn't it? And about 7 p.m. on Monday, I was booking all my travel and sorting out my accommodation for Manchester and eagerly awaiting, you know, what I thought was going to be one of the games of the season, and hope still will be one of the games of the season. And I'm sort of like, oh, do I really want to go? It's a long way to go on a Sunday evening, but I was like, yeah, you know, the team will be there. You have that Odegaard, Rice, Partey midfield. Everything will be good. It'll be great fun. Yeah, I feel like I brought it on Arsenal by booking on that assumption.
No, I was putting my kids to bed on Monday night, and so I didn't look at my phone for about an hour. And I came back downstairs, and I randomly opened Facebook on my phone when I sat down on the sofa after getting to sleep. And the first thing I saw was a still image of Martin Odegaard's ankle going in the other direction that someone had posted. And I just looked at it and thought, what the hell have I missed? And then obviously I went on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, and saw it, and I was just like, oh my God, that is just the worst possible news. I'd spent like the last 2 weeks talking about, since the window shut, about my fear of losing Martin Odegaard potentially for a long period of time, and those fears very quickly became very, very real. Yeah, I mean, it's a hammer blow, isn't it? We don't know yet. Obviously, the latest news today from Norway, the interview that the doctor has given, doesn't really put too much clarity on it. He basically said 3 weeks is a minimum, but it could be a lot worse. So obviously they don't know yet what Arsenal have been doing over here in terms of the scans and what those scans have shown up yet. Whether we find out a little bit later on in the week, I suggest we probably will. Obviously, I'll be at. Are you going to Colney on Friday?
No, my sister's down.
Actually, yeah. See, I'll go. I'm going to Colney on Friday, and whether we get a full sort of update in terms of a timeline, then we'll wait and see. But certainly from Norway, the main news, I suppose, from that interview was it's not believed to be a fracture, and yeah, and the 3 weeks minimum timescale was given. So wait and see. But whatever happens, you know, he's definitely going to miss a North London derby. He's definitely going to miss probably the next couple of Champions League games. He's definitely going to miss Manchester City away, and all at a time when Arsenal already without, you know, summer signing Mikel Marino. Obviously, Declan Rice is suspended this weekend. So it's a worst possible time. I mean, it's never a good time for Martin Odegaard to get injured, but this is almost feels like the worst possible time for it to happen.
Oh, by a long shot. I think you could, if you kind of got Arsenal's fixture list out and started picking 3-week dates, I think you could find quite a few with the quality of this squad where you would go, okay, they can cope for a few games without Martin Odegaard. That's livable. And just to say, I mean, you know, we are talking 3 weeks at a minimum. Talking to people that know, I mean, again, they were pretty confident that there wasn't a break or anything like that. But even they were talking, you know, maybe something that runs out beyond 4 weeks. Now, kind of once you get to that 4-week mark, you're into the next international break, and then it the difference between a 4-week and a 5.5-week absence is not necessarily huge, but like, God, it's such a testing time. Due to that PSG game on October the 1st, which, best case scenario at that 3-week mark, he's probably short of. He's probably going to miss the PSG game as well, or if he's able to play, it'll be limited, and he probably doesn't look like he'll get much game time before. I mean, I think we should say I looked at that and thought his ankle was broken when I saw.
Like I said, the first thing I saw was that image of his ankle basically pointing in the wrong direction, and I just thought, oh my God, he's broken his ankle. So yeah, I was convinced he had
like a large chunk of the season. So there's that.
I mean, I'm looking at the games here until that next international break. So obviously it's Spurs, Atlanta, Man City all to come this week. Then you got Bolton in the cup, which he wouldn't have played anyway. Then you got Leicester, PSG, and Saints before the next international break, and then you come back against Bournemouth on October the 19th. So that's probably that Bournemouth game now is 5 weeks away, kind of, give or take, just around 5 weeks. In my mind, that's the sort of game I'm looking at now as potentially the return of Martin Odegaard. So you've got a chunk of games there to navigate. And obviously the big question is that everyone's talking about, as David here has got in touch, says, what would you do best to navigate this period without Odegaard in the team? This man, now I want to talk about it, Ethan. I think this is a really intriguing thing in terms of what Mikel is going to do. What options has Mikel got? He hasn't got that many, let's put it that way, in terms of actual sort of natural fits to come in and replace Odegaard man for man. I mean, it's very hard. How do you replace Martin Odegaard? It's kind of, you're in that same realms of how do you replace Bukayo Saka? And when you're that important, when you're that crucial to the team, it's very, very hard to just have a replacement there. But obviously, Vieira went, Smith Rowe have gone. So you've got Ethan, who is this hugely talented kid who we know can play in that position, is probably best suited in that position, to be honest. And Arsenal he's shown when he has stepped up to play in the senior teams that he's got a lot of quality. The senior players seem to trust him. They don't mind him having the ball. He's shown he can cause teams troubles, as we saw over in America in the US tour. But this is a whole other story, throwing a 17-year-old kid in for the North London derby, throwing him for Manchester City away, throwing him for the Atalanta game, which I'm sure is going to be absolutely mad as well on that Thursday night. I think he'll definitely get minutes, but I think that the decision that Arteta's got facing him when it comes to when do I bring Ethan in, what games do I... It's just not as simple as just saying, oh, let's throw him in because he's a direct replacement, is it?
Yeah, I think it would be verging on the irresponsible Ethan Nwaneri to be given his first competitive Premier League minutes. I know he's played, but he's played when games are won. Mm-hmm. For those first Premier League minutes of note to come in the North London derby at Tottenham away to Man City, I think could run the risk of a really serious backfiring that does more harm than good to Ethan Nwaneri's long-term career. Like, I could be wrong. Like, he could start Nwaneri, it could live up to all the hopes and dreams and prove himself from the very outset to be, the next young superstar of the English game. But I kind of think that's a long shot. And while it's a long shot, you'd really damage his career. I think that's, something that you've got to consider as well, how trying it would be for him to be thrown in at the deep end. By all means.
What about people who will listen to arguments like that and say, well, what about Lamine Yamal at Barcelona? It didn't do him any harm.
He didn't debut in the Clasico, did he?
No,
to the best of my knowledge.
But he's playing at this level already at that age, similar age to Ethan. I mean, we were all, I was there. I'm not sure if you were there or not, but you certainly would have watched it. Jack Wilshere against Barcelona, that amazing Barcelona team at very similar age to Ethan now, maybe slightly older and did have a little bit more experience, but still being thrown into that sort of occasion and stepping up and delivering that type of performance. And I agree with what you're saying, by the way. I'm not arguing against it. But
no, I mean, a lot of people are arguing for it.
Exactly. I've seen a lot of people saying it to me, why not? If Barca can do it, well, and a lot of people have pointed out, Jack Wilshere, why couldn't he step up and just be ready to play in that sort of atmosphere, in that sort of intensity?
It's not that he necessarily can't. It's just, I don't think it's a conducive kind of way to start things off. I think if the fixture list was flipped on its head and you could have a game against Southampton, I would be sort of sitting here saying, yeah, let's take a look. Let's see what he can do, because there are so many, so few options. And then there is time to build to this. I just think the pressure that would be on Nwaneri's shoulders in a midfield that is going to be so in transition. I don't think that's conducive to his career. And I think at some stage you do have to take the longer term view and say, can we put together a midfield that gets us through these games without putting
sorry
undue
to interrupt
pressure?
again. Sorry to interrupt again. But do you think, given what you were saying, do you think if Rice was playing and Marino was left 8, would it be an easier call or not such a risky call to put Nwaneri into a settled midfield, with two really experienced players rather than this mix and match midfield, which no doubt we're going to have to see on Sunday?
I mean, we're probably talking, I know we both picked our own preferred teams, but we're probably talking some sort of Jorginho Partey pairing. So whoever plays alongside them has got to be the legs out of possession, has got to do an awful lot of work in the final third.
Mm-hmm.
This is not sort of bringing Ethan in to be the third midfielder in a high functioning system. This is, we're kind of throwing everything together and seeing what fits because we've not played this group of players together before. I think there's enough of a risk that it just sort of hinders Nwaneri's development. That it's not worth starting. I emphasize starting him in the North London derby.
Yeah.
If I'm wrong, believe me, I'm sure I'll get the tweets and get the people in the comments here telling me so. But I'll be very happy to be wrong. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'd be really surprised if he does start. I think back to Arteta's decision to start Charlie Patino away at Nottingham Forest in that cup game in a completely changed team, not alongside the experienced players that, Arsenal's first team player had then. It was a real changed team in a night game under the lights at the City Ground, which was bouncing and they were so up for it. And it was so high intensity. And I'm not sure Patino ever really recovered from that game because it wasn't his fault that Arsenal played badly, and there was senior players who played worse than him. But I think that was the wrong time to start Charlie in that game, and I'm not sure he ever recovered from it. And I would worry about if something went, if say Nwaneri came in and he really struggled and Tottenham ran riot and won the game comfortably, what would be the reaction to Nwaneri's performance there or anything like that? I think it's a really important decision when you bring him in. He's no doubt Nwaneri's going to play minutes this season. He's going to have an impact on this season. He's going to get his chances. The decision of when to actually bring him in and for what game, I think I totally agree with you. I think if Arsenal were playing Southampton at home or Leicester at home this weekend, definitely if Rice was there and definitely even if it was just Rice there, I think it would be a much easier call and less risky call to play Ethan. I think he's absolutely ready to play in the Premier League. I'm sure he is. I don't worry about if he does play that he would struggle in terms of showing his quality. I think he can perform at the Premier League level. But I do think you've got to carefully lay out that sort of pathway for him, that development plan for him. And I'm not sure the North London derby away from home is the right call for them. So in terms of what was being asked here, then, if we're both saying it's probably not going to be Nwaneri, what would you do to best navigate this period without Odegaard in the team? I mean, this period, like we said, it could be 8 games, it could be 10 games, it could be 15 games. We don't know yet. And we both think that Nwaneri will have a part to play in navigating this period, don't we? But then what else is there? You've obviously got, I mean, we will talk about the lineups, but I'm speaking more for the long term rather than just for this weekend. You've obviously got the Havertz. You can play Havertz there, no doubt about it. A lot of people have been asking about Sterling potentially playing in that 10 role. We know that we've seen Leandro Trossard play as a sort of 8 at times for Arsenal, more on the left than on the right. But so what how do you navigate this period without Odegaard in the team?
Yeah, Havertz and Trossard is really how I see it working now. Potentially, and we'll come on to this specifically in the derby. Potentially, you use those two together. Especially, I think when Rice is back in the team, you almost play something that's a bit like a 4-4-2, where you have Rice and Jorginho or Partey, probably Partey for most of the games. And then Havertz is a little ahead, which he kind of would be without the ball anyway. The challenge is you sort of have to sort of muddle together how it all works in build-up, how it works before you get into the final third, who interchanges with Saka and White. But I think the easiest way to fix it is just to not try and rebuild the whole midfield. And I do have sort of issues and concerns about how that midfield is looking generally. But right now, without Marino as well, until November-ish. I think the best thing you can do is just try to make it to ask as little as possible as a few players as possible. So keep Rice running at 8, Partey or Jorginho at the 6, and it will need to be both. If we look ahead to next week and Atlanta and Man City, I think the best thing you can do is ease the burden by just saying, you guys do what you know how to do. Let's not kind of overcomplicate this by moving Calafiori and playing Raheem Sterling in a position he's never really played. I know he was sort of a tip of a diamond player at Liverpool, wasn't he, in the early years? But that's like a decade ago. So I think putting Kai Havertz in a role he's relatively familiar with, running it as more 4-2-3-1, 4-4-2 than a 4-4-3. Doing the same with Trossard as well, who's played left 8, maybe get him to play right 8. Those to me feel like you're not blowing the whole team up to address the Odegaard problem, which I think would only create problems elsewhere across the pitch. Just accept that you're plugging a gap with someone that's maybe not one of the 2 or 3 best creators in the world.
Yeah, it's not just about the creativity though. I mean, Odegaard's everything goes through him. The press, he's a guy who triggers the press. He brings everyone forward. When he goes, everyone else goes, and someone else is going to have to take on that role, aren't they? And it's like, who does that, and how? It's going to be such an interesting thing to watch how Arsenal get through this. Do you? In my mind, I kind of look at it and think, whatever happens, this is going to be a completely different Arsenal team without Odegaard. The way they play, it's going to look. What we saw against Brighton, I thought, after he got that injury, where he couldn't press, he couldn't push off. You could see he didn't have the power in his leg to really go. And I think he got about 8 or 10 touches of the ball after the injury or something. It was he just wasn't in the game. And I thought what we saw from Arsenal then, that's a very good indication of, I think, what we're going to see from Arsenal now. Do you just rely on what you do best? Which for Arsenal, they defend very, very well. They defend their box superbly. And are you going to have to fall back into that a little bit and accept that creativity-wise, you're not going to be at your very best? You're maybe not going to create as many chances as you do. You're maybe not going to press as well as you do. But what you are going to do is defend your goal, keep yourself in the game, and then hope, you've got players who can still go up and win you the game in Bukayo Saka and Kai Havertz and Martinelli, Trossard, Sterling, something like that. So I do wonder if there's even going to be more of an emphasis now on just defending so well and then seeing what the forwards do. I mean, you've got a couple of people here shouting for, or not shouting for, but asking about Sterling playing in that sort of a central attacking role, or number 10, a right 8, whatever you want to call it. I don't really see it for me. I don't think you suddenly chuck Sterling in there. I'm sure he could just about do a job there, but I can't see him filling the void that Odegaard does.
He's not a high touch guy, is he? I've seen Kai Havertz play, going way back to Leverkusen, and to an extent with Trossard as well. I've seen them play in ways where the ball goes through them a lot in build-up. I'd have to go back a very long time to remember that with Sterling. I mean, he has so many qualities, but that's just not kind of one of them that he's had to develop. It's been a lifetime of being the player that's kind of on those last 3 or 4 touches of a move. And I think he would find it particularly hard in a new team to approximate Odegaard's role. It seems like that, again, is setting someone up to fail, whereas Havertz, Trossard, I can see how they know how to do it. I mean, it's also fair to say they're very established. They understand maybe better than someone that watches from outside the team, outside the club. They understand better what it is that they need to bring that Odegaard brought, because they're used to seeing him do it.
Yeah, I think if you're playing Sterling in that central role as well, you're taking away a huge amount of what he's good at and a huge amount of reason what he's been signed for as well. So I'm not sure. So look, we're going to turn our attentions to the lineups, and having, as you were just saying, that you're not going to rip up everything just because of an Odegaard injury. I'm now putting up our predicted 11s, which has Zinchenko for you playing as the right-sided attacking midfielder. So these are the.
I wanted him at the left. I wanted him on the left.
Oh, did you want it on the left? Sorry,
it doesn't matter.
I didn't remember. It doesn't matter. No. So these are the 11s that I think we're going for. We're not saying this is what Arteta's going to do. This is what we would opt for. So I've gone, as I did this one yesterday on my channel as well, so people have seen this. So I've gone with the Jorginho Partey sort of double axis. And again, almost like I was just suggesting, just fall back, have those two in front of the defence, just defend that goal, and then see what Saka, Havertz, Martinelli and Trossard can do when you do get the ball forward. You've gone same sort of... you've gone the same sort of system as we're used to, but you've got Jorginho instead of Partey in that holding role, and then swapped Zinchenko and Havertz over. So you're having Havertz as a right 8 and Zinchenko as the left 8.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the Jorginho one, I mean, the challenge is, I've kind of contradicting what I just said, is that I do see the value in stability where you can have it in this team. But I frankly think Thomas Partey has been quite poor this season. I think the defense looks a lot more vulnerable with him shielding it. And I'm thinking entirely here for the North London derby. I think Jorginho is a better option. I know what happened in last season's North London derby at the Emirates. Zinchenko, he's a very good midfielder. I know, and I remember it was you, wasn't it, that asked Arteta about this? I want to say back in March. I mean, it was early this year, and Arteta sort of gave one of those non-committal answers that really left you thinking, it's not going to happen, is it? He's never going to play as a central midfielder. But he plays it incredibly well for Ukraine. All of his best qualities would be pretty effective in central midfield. I'm not too worried about the defensive drop-off, because it's not like he's kind of getting in these one-on-one duels with wide forwards. He's got to press well, hold his shape. I would suspect more hold his shape because he'd be in that second line with Jorginho. And he becomes the guy that can really play those passes through the lines. That I don't know. It's been a while since Havertz has tried them. It's tough. In the end, this is one of those sort of things that I sometimes criticize Arteta over, when you've never taken a look at Zinchenko as an 8 in this team in a competitive game. It's hard to see how you can do that in the North London derby. But you know me, I'm quite cavalier. I like to take a swing at things. So I would do that. And I think I'd last like 6 games in charge of Arsenal before the players rebelled and I was sacked.
We've both gone with Trossard as the 9 then, and Havertz sort of playing in whatever system, both sort of playing behind him. We've both resisted the urge to bring Sterling in. Is there any way in your mind that you see Sterling starting this game?
No, not least because I think he could have a really positive impact off the bench. Yeah. I know that Trossard does that very well, but just the pace of Sterling. And I was sort of umming and ahhing about playing him on the left instead of Martinelli, but at some stage your instincts have to take over. I don't know what I'd do if I felt Jesus was fully fit. I think there's a really strong... That's almost the one where we're just in the dark. I have tried to find out.
Well, I think, I think the next question that I was going to bring up was about Jesus. So, what's the timeline for Gabby Jesus? This is Anthony talking. Says, what about Havertz at the 10, where he just played for Germany, and Jesus at the 9, or Trossard start Martinelli left wing? He tracks back and plays defence well. Can you give a shout out to the Arsenal Mexico Supporters Club? Indeed, we can.
That sounds like I tell you what, better than that. If the Arsenal Mexico Supporters Club can, rummage up a few quid, we'd love to come and visit you.
Well, you're asking them to pay for us.
Bring us out.
Yeah, not sure there'll be 2 up for that, to be fair. But yeah, the timeline and Jesus. Now, I was talking to someone earlier this week, and all I got was that he wasn't at that stage ruled out of this weekend. So I think there's definitely a hope that he could be back in some way. I would be stunned if he comes straight in and starts a game. I don't know how much he's been training, if indeed he's even started training yet. But all I was told that there was a chance. They were working towards the possibility of him being involved this weekend. But I'd be very surprised if he starts that game. I just think Trossard's on it. He's fit. He's been there for the last 2 weeks. He didn't go away with Belgium. Whatever they've been working on ahead of Sunday, I'm sure Trossard's been front and centre of that. So I just think it would be much more likely to be Trossard involved than Gabby Jesus at this time. But look, Anthony, thanks for the question. And big shout out to the Arsenal Mexico Supporters Club. So what were you were saying there about if Jesus was fit and deemed fully fit, would you be tempted to start him?
I'd love him to start. I know that especially over the last few months, I've been very Jesus positive. But I think for a game like this, and a game where the midfield's going to need all the help it can get, I don't think there are many players better at being the one to lead the press, at being the one to fight for those loose balls, to track back sometimes to a fault. I would, if Jesus is in the 11, I kind of will take for granted that he's fit enough to start. And if he is, I think that would be a really encouraging bit of news for Arteta. But kind of like you, I would be incredibly surprised. But it would be, I think, a good surprise and a very welcome surprise to have him. Also, because it means I get Trossard off the bench. And I've said for a while now, I think Trossard is best off the bench.
Yeah, I don't think his performance against Brighton's going to quieten the voices who say that. Yeah, I mean, it'd be a great surprise if Jesus was involved, but I'd be surprised if you sort of call on him from a starter. Are you going on Sunday? Are you there?
I am. Email came through mere moments ago.
I haven't checked. Oh, I've been waiting. Mine's still been
yeah.
Thing. Let me see.
What live.
I want to see if I'm involved in this. I got the accreditation for City came through like last week. It was really, really early.
Yeah. Thank you, media team at Man City. We appreciate that. It meant I could get my train booked nice and early.
Oh, can you believe that? I've been logged out of the app.
Oh no!
Logged out, and I have to go through that. I hate it. It always does that on the app as well. It always logs you out, and you have to go and get the number sent to your email. So I'm not going to be able to find out. But hopefully, I will be there.
We'll do a postscript on this.
Yes. Right. Samuel's got in touch here, saying just offering my opinion here as opposed to a question. With people all but writing off our chances for the next couple of games, I'm personally quite excited to see what Magic Arteta does with our midfield, because we still have a ton of quality players, and I hope we show that quality on the weekend. The attack and defence are both stacked with quality, with Georgie and Partey both fit. Who knows what the missing piece Arteta opts to slot in? I just thought this was quite interesting because there's been a lot of talk about, a lot of anger, almost certainly on social media, about what Arsenal did or didn't do in the transfer window and how they've left themselves short. And I agree. I do think my fear was they've left themselves at least one player short. But then they've got these issues at the moment. No Jesus, no Partey, no Rice for the weekend, no Marino, no Odegaard. And yet you still look at the teams that we're putting together. It's still a very, very strong team. I mean, you've got all those problems in midfield, and yet your midfield pairing could still be Jorginho and Thomas Partey. It's high quality stuff as well. So there is definitely the options there for Mikel to play with, and there is understandably been a lot of doom and gloom after the injury. I mean, I felt absolutely gutted on Monday. I was lying in bed on Monday night trying to get to sleep, thinking about the fact that Odegaard was potentially injured for ages, and it was, I felt thoroughly miserable still on Tuesday morning when I woke up about it. But there is still a lot of very good options. It's still a very good squad that Arteta's got on his hands to try and get them through this period. I think it is just unfortunate in a way that the next 3 games are so incredibly tough all away from home as well. You kind of feel like you need a nicer little run to get through at this stage after these sort of injury problems.
I think this is a really exciting opportunity to change the story around the external story around Arsenal, separate from not just inside the club, not just the supporters and the people that cover it sort of day in, day out. But you saw it when Odegaard's injury happened, that it was sort of like, oh, look, here is Arsenal finally having an injury for the first time in 3 years. And you think, pretty certain Arsenal Arsenal put in title challenges in 2 years when they've had a fit Gabriel Jesus for what seemed like about 12 games. They lost Yuri and Timber for a whole season. So many
Saliba.
Partey as well. They hardly had Thomas Partey last season. And I players and staff and all that will always tell you it kind of doesn't matter what the external noise is, that they switch it off. But I think if you came away from the Premier League games in particular with 4 points, even 2 points, I think you've really changed the story about Arsenal, and that sort of fighting spirit that we all see, seeing them as frequently as we do, the rest of the league will see. And I think it will be a real message to the league.
Oh, absolutely. If you can come through these 2 games with a decent haul of points, it would be a huge message. I mean, Steve here says, I feel like for Arsenal to really be considered an elite team, we need to be able to get through the Spuds and City with at least 4 points. Last year, City without De Bruyne, half season, didn't have Haaland and still won. Does Arsenal need to hold themselves to the same standards or City, or are we still a level below? Could perhaps use these injury suspensions as an excuse. P.S. It's my 28th birthday today, so answering my question would definitely be considered a gift from you guys.
Happy birthday, Steve.
Consider this a gift, Stephen. Happy birthday indeed. 28, that makes me sick. It really does. I don't remember what I was doing on my 28th birthday. In fact, I probably wouldn't be able to tell you, because I'm pretty sure what it would have involved. And so I definitely won't be able to remember. Yes, 4 points, absolutely. That would be a hell of an achievement. And it would be, do Arsenal, every team gets injuries, no doubt about it. You've got to get through them. If you want to win a league, if you're going to go up against the likes of Man City, you're going to have to win games with your backs to the wall and that sort of stuff. So, I mean, it is an opportunity for Arsenal to show they are an elite team as well. And as Steve points out, City had to do it without De Bruyne for a huge chunk of last season and had injuries as well. Yes, they've got far bigger resources than Arsenal do to be able to get themselves through that sort of period. But you just have to get through these periods when you got injuries, don't you? Suck it up. And I don't think anyone will be using it as an excuse either. Certainly not at Arsenal.
Yeah, I went on our CBS Sports channel last night. I was sort of saying, I really think when you hear from Mikel Arteta on Friday, he is almost going to be telling his squad through the press conference to embrace this challenge, to celebrate the chance to sort of prove that they don't need to be at 100% to compete with the rest of the league. I think it is really worth pointing out that, you know, City lost De Bruyne, but they sort of only lost De Bruyne, whereas Arsenal have kind of lost, and they lost Haaland, but Alvarez was always fit. And sometimes I think the one thing you'd say about Arsenal's injury record is it's sort of been like a little hit in one position. Obviously, when that was Saliba, for instance, it was cataclysmic. But they were able to cope without Partey, who we kind of expected to be their starting DM all year, because that was the only real long-term issue they had in midfield. And right now, specifically, it's that triumvirate, isn't it? Especially for the derby, it's no Rice, no Marino, no Odegaard. And that to me is like the kind of the definition of a crisis, an injury crisis. Not that I'm blaming Edu or anything.
Which I think that 3, isn't it? His entire midfield 3 gone for one game.
Starting, yeah. That's and you know, kind of going back to what you were saying earlier, it speaks so well for how this squad has been constructed that doesn't mean that you're kind of bringing your Rob Holdings and Cedrics to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium with you. But equally, the better the team gets, the higher the standards are. And do we have to hold Arsenal to City standards? Of course we do, because that's the team they have to beat. So, of course, that's the team you assess them against.
Tatar here has got in touch and said, I made this comment yesterday, but you didn't bring it up. Since you've repeated your point again in this show, I'll repeat mine. You said that you're not sure if Vieira would have started at NLD even if he was still here, but he literally started the home NLD this time last year. So yes, sending him on loan without replacing him was not a good decision, and it might cost us. Love the capital letters. I love your shows and keep up the good work. Sorry for typing in all caps. He did start the North London derby last year, but he was hooked at half time and didn't start another game in the league for the rest of the season. So that's one thing on it. He did start that game, but he lasted 45 minutes and never started another game in the season in the Premier League for Arsenal. And look, I was against them allowing Vieira to leave. I was very surprised they allowed it to do it. But all I was saying in the shows I've done this week was, even given, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, even now, given who's out and isn't going to play this weekend, if Vieira was still here in the squad, do you think he started on Sunday?
Oh, I probably I think he would. I think they would.
I don't think he would. I think he would.
But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he went like, you know, what we assume Jorginho, Partey, Havertz, and he would be right on the cusp, and it would be a big debate. And you know, the difference is that Fabio Vieira of a year ago had come off a great pre-season, looked to be going places, and was hooked at halftime and then got injured very soon after. And
that was his last Premier League appearance for Arsenal. Last Premier League start for Arsenal.
And his trajectory then was very different to his trajectory now. And if Fabio Vieira was still at the club, he probably would have played no minutes in the opening 3 games of the season. And I think there would be at the very least, it would be really up for debate whether Vieira would start in the derby. So, you know, I was in favour of loaning him out. I think it's much better. And if it's almost debatable whether you'd start him when you don't have Martin Odegaard and you don't have Mikel Marino and Declan Rice, I think that does vindicate the decision to just get him somewhere where he isn't kind of up for debate, even in circumstances that are favourable to him.
Guess what?
Wow.
He's injured. He's out for 3. Fabio. He's out for 3 weeks, Fabio Vieira. Not even fit for Porto. Sambi Lokonga's injured as well. It's like the midfield crisis at Arsenal is stretching out to the loan players as well. So yeah, he's going to miss Harry.
What was in the water this summer?
He's not even played for Porto yet, and he's injured, unfortunately. He got injured in training this week. This is an interesting one from Eamon. He says, what do you think of limiting the amount of games a player can play each season? This is bound to be better for players' health. Now, this international break, I think, has been pretty interesting. We saw Bernardo Silva talking about it at length and really sort of passionately, didn't he, while his way into Portugal, in terms of just the sheer amount of games these players are having to play. And you know, the Odegaard thing has brought into light, Arsenal fans have been looking at it thinking, why this whole international break is so stupid. It's been 3 weeks of a season. Do we really need to have a round of international fixtures here? You got Odegaard got injured. I saw Nathan Ake got injured yesterday for City. Looks like a bad hand or muscle injury for in the Holland game against Germany. Players are dropping in these round of international fixtures, and it feels like we're getting to a tipping point where we're hearing more and more noise from the union and everything like that about potential strike on the horizon, something like this. It feels like there is, with all the new tournaments being added, the Club World Cup next summer as well, and everything like that. Do you think something needs to come in, like the suggestion there of almost limiting, a player can play no more than 65 games in a season or 60 games in a season or something like that? It's a tough one to answer, I know, but it's going to be very interesting to see at what point the sort of two worlds collides in terms of the fixtures just continuing to come, and then on the players' side, them taking a stand against it and saying, no, hold on, we can't do anymore.
Well, I mean, if that's actually going to happen, someone's going to have to be willing to not get paid, whether it's the clubs. I don't like the idea that this is always sort of international football's problem. I found some of the sort of, the suggestions that Martin Odegaard shouldn't be playing, all that Arsenal should be blocking him. I don't like. I think international football is an important part of the game, and I know that we all prefer watching club football, that it's a higher standard, but I think that's probably quite an Anglo-centric point of view that comes from a nation that doesn't have great international success, but does have very good club football. Ultimately, what it comes down to is the clubs are going to keep scheduling games if it makes them money, and the players are going to keep saying, "Pay us more money. You're making more money." I have to say, don't often come on here and say this. I don't often go anywhere and say this. I was impressed with Chelsea almost sort of taking a stand and saying, we're not going to pick Cole Palmer, Fofana and Lavia in the Conference League. But that's such a unique set of circumstances. Arsenal don't really have a competition bar the League Cup where they can do that. Someone somewhere has to say, I'm willing to either take less money to play less football for the long term of my career, or the clubs need to kind of actually look at it. And I wonder if the Club World Cup may end up being a catalyst for this, because no one's paying big money to get the broadcast rights, which still haven't been confirmed by FIFA. It doesn't seem to be building much excitement. And I'm kind of looking at this from someone that works for a US company, where you would think the buzz would be great, and it isn't really. And I think potentially, if the Club World Cup falls on its face, perhaps the market will kind of come to this view of we're oversaturating it, like Marvel movies. There was just too much football, too many Marvel films. That moment might well come, and it might well be that the market makes the decision for the players or the clubs. But I think while there's money to be made, I just can't ever see it changing, and I think the demands will get more and more and more.
No, I think you're right. I think my sort of grievances with the Odegaard situation, it wasn't that I just felt like there was an opportunity for everyone just to be a little bit more sensible. The fact, if he hadn't got that injury,
he'd had a summer off.
I know, it was more just the injury against Brighton. He was clearly very injured against Brighton. I know this injury probably played no part, or that injury played no part in what happened to him. But I can't say that for certain. I don't know if it was a weak leg or something that did it. But he was clearly very, very injured against Brighton. That was a bad. He was really suffering then. You could see just by the way he played that he was, and you could see after the game he was as well. I just felt like when you get that big a kick right on the even international round of fixtures, it's probably a little bit more sensible for everyone to come together and think, you know what,
agreed.
Maybe this isn't the best thing for him. But yeah, the clubs can't just block a player. I mean, he's a Norway captain. If he wants to go, then he's going to go. You can't start standing in the way. And I know people saying Arsenal need to be smarter with this and things. You look at Chelsea, they've said Cole Palmer was ill. He's been back training like for the whole time that England have been playing. Same with, I think, Foden at Manchester City. And maybe, yes, you can be a little bit smarter at times. But I think with Odegaard, it was slightly different. Like there was no tournament football for Norway in the summer. He's the captain. They've been dreadful, quite frankly, and they need to start winning games. So it's very hard to block him if he wants to go and play for him. But I did think just on the back of that injury against Brighton that there was maybe an opportunity for everyone to just think, it's probably best just to not take any risks with such an important player.
Arsenal were quite cute with Saka back before the World Cup, weren't they? So It's hard. I think the Norway one is, like you've really articulated well there. That's a specific challenge. I don't know that much about Ståle Solbakken's position, but I would assume anyone that is kind of coaching a really talented young team that didn't qualify for the Euros is going to be feeling the pressure, even in a competition like the Nations League.
Yeah, I wonder if Arteta liked his interview after the game on Saturday on the injury. Did you see it? The laugh when he's like, "Yeah, I don't think Arteta's going to be calling me or whatever," and the laugh.
I'm not sure they'd love the running commentary as well from the Norway team doctor on the exact latest on Martin Odegaard.
No, well, that Solbakken interview made my blood boil. So I don't know what it did to Mikel Arteta, but yeah, it's been a fun one. I think we're going to call time on this now. I've got to run off and do the school run as the joys of that. And I just noticed out the window that I'm looking at the moment, it is clouding over and it's probably going to tip it down the second I walk out the door, which is always the way on the school run. But I'll be back tomorrow, everyone, for my usual show. As usual, you want to get in touch and anything you want me to discuss, get into the comments and do that. Myself and James will be back to do it all over again next week. Probably, I would say on Wednesday, maybe.
When's the game?
Thursday.
No, I'm not going out to Italy now.
First Champions League game of the season, and it's on a Thursday night. Honestly, that should be absolutely vetoed. That should not be allowed to happen. Yeah, I'm not going to that one, but I might go to Colney on Wednesday for the training, though. Potentially, I'll think about that. But yeah, maybe.
Which trip have you got your eyes on? I think Girona
Milan. I think I'm going to try and do. I just want to. I've still. San Siro has just been my sort of, aside from Arsenal and everything. Milan and the San Siro has just always been my sort of thing in football. I think it's just grown up for the Italian 90. It was my first World Cup, and the San Siro is just an unbelievable stadium, and I've just never been there for whatever reason. I always seem to miss the games that Arsenal playing, and I'm very worried it's going to get knocked down before I get the chance to go. So I've got my eye on the San Siro game.
Quite a good shout. I might have to get on Milan guy to see if he can get us 2 passes. That would be good.
Yeah, so
I think Arsenal are going to lose that one.
Don't say what way to finish the pod that is. It's already been a downbeat pod, and now you're predicting a Champions League defeat. So yeah, we'll be back to do it all over again next week, and I reckon we'll probably do a bit of a preview ahead of the Atalanta game. It might make sense to do it then. And through all you watching, thank you for getting involved as always, and we'll see you next week. Bye bye.
Bye bye.